Hello, everyone. This is Eva Nolik-Smith with YogaUOnline, and I'm extremely excited to be here today with somatic yoga teacher Bobbie Ellis. Bobbie has an incredible background. She, for more than 36 years, has been studying yoga movement, body work, and the spiritual unfolding of human experience through those practices. Bobbie is the founder of Soma Yoga and the owner and director of Soma Center in New Jersey. And her background includes certifications and study in many, many different yoga realms, including Kripalu Yoga, Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy, and also an incredible background in body work, massage therapy, neuromuscular therapy, Thai yoga, Mama Point, and Ayurveda, and so on. But I think, Bobbie, one of your main areas of study has been with Emily Conrad, the founder of Continuum movement, which was a study you were lucky to have from 2006 until Emily passed in 2014. And Bobbie, you have since created teacher trainings and approaches to the practice of yoga that includes the continuum approach to practice. So I am very curious to hear more about your background, and there's a lot to talk about, obviously. So let's just start with Soma Yoga. What is Soma Yoga? Why did you create this approach to practice? And how is it different from how we normally approach yoga practice?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I really appreciate being here with you. Soma Yoga came out of a deep process of exploration for myself, as well as the students that I work with. What I found was the somatic underlying expression of the organism that we call a body was a little bit removed from how we practice yoga in terms of someone just following along with what someone says to them in terms with what to do. Like, in other words, I'm going to move my foot here, I'm going to take my arm here, and I'm going to follow along what my teacher tells me, right? So that to me was satisfying to a point personally. And when I started working with Emily, which was in 1998, was when I actually formally started working with her, I was authorized to teach Continuum in 2006. There was a path that I started putting myself on that had to do with really learning about the process of Continuum, which is basically an inquiry practice into what it means to have a body, what it means to really feel into the sensory expression of how and when and how the urges come up around body movements. That's a very small description of Continuum, and I'd like to get into that a little further. But that really sparked an interest in me because I think that that's really what I was missing out on. I didn't get enough time in a yoga class for myself when I would take one, where I had an opportunity to really feel what the cues were offering me and how I might start to bring them a little bit more deeply into a self-regulated process for myself, where I was really living into an experience that I was having and learning about my body rather than just following along. So, and I'm not saying it's an either or thing, I think it's an and. So for example, really having some time to feel the qualities of what I'm doing was really important to me. So that was the beginning development of Soma Yoga. And by the way, Soma Yoga is always in a developmental phase. I like to say that because it's not a closed system. So the process is an open system in the way that every experience that a student or myself can have is the right one. So one of the most important teachings that I had it was probably about 15 years ago, and I was in a teacher training program. And I had had a profound experience in one of the asana practices. And we came back as a group to share our experiences together. And the teacher asked me what I was experiencing, and I was so excited to express it, and I was told that it was wrong. And that was the beginning of the end of me following as much as listening. Right? So I became very, very entrenched, I will say, in a good way, in the process of Continuum. I abandoned all of my yoga practices for about 8 years to really learn Continuum, because I found that when I would do Continuum and then I would go back to more alignment-based, specific movement practices, it would confuse me in terms of what I was trying to listen to and follow in my body. Since then, I have been able to do both, right? So Soma Yoga came out of those deep inner processes for myself. And then I created teacher training programs around that. So the way that a teacher training program would happen in Soma Yoga would be, there's a little bit of context that we lay out, meaning offering you a place to lie down or sit up or a shape in your body. And then we might do some other stimulation. A lot of it has to do with sound, and also building in the ability to have inner tracking. So that gets a little bit lost in some, let's say, more exercise forms. So inner tracking is really listening to, if I do something with my body, can I and see what it is that's happening all the way through it. So inner tracking becomes really important. Also, the other two things that I teach in the very beginning stages of a process, of which I'd like to teach in the upcoming September classes that I'm going to teach with Yoga University, is how do we really reestablish our relationship to the earth? So we do a lot of gravity practices, we do a lot of grounding practices in the beginning, because if you don't have a sense of ground in your body, if you don't have a sense of relationship to gravity, the movements that you have are not going to be as coherent as if you have that base. So those are the two things that we're going to explore in our time together in September. Ground, gravity, and space are the things that will start to have a base to explore.
Beautiful, beautiful. Great. So I really want to return to the whole thing with somatic yoga and the approach, the somatic approach to practice, because it's such an important piece. But first, tell us a little bit. A lot of people are probably not familiar with Emily Conrad and her work with Continuum movement, which in and of itself is, you know, an amazing area. So tell us about that work and how you got involved with Emily.
Sure. In 1998, well, in 1997, I had a really bad skiing accident, which left me with some physical limitations, of which my yoga practice wasn't really helping me as much as I would have liked. I had been seeing Emily Conrad's work in the periphery of my site for many years, and I was interested in it, but for whatever reason, every time I would see her doing something, I wasn't available. So the summer of 1998, I took a 5-day course with Emily at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. It completely changed my viewpoint of the experience of my own body and how I was going to then go back and teach, which I had no idea what to do. Continuum is an inquiry practice. So it's a practice of being curious and always on the edge of discovery. Some of the elements that we use to explore is sound, So in Continuum, we consider the body mostly water. We consider the water process within us as deep wisdom. So when we use sound, the sound increases the aliveness of fluid expression. So by doing sound and then going into a process of just openly paying attention and seeing what the sensory feedback was from that stimuli is where we start to move from. The silence in terms of really listening to what kind of feedback is my body offering me after I do the sound is an important piece of Continuum. So in the process of bringing Continuum and yoga together, what I have done is created, I would say, syllabus of posture forms, bringing sound in, and then inviting people into a deep place of listening in terms of where they would like to move from within the context of that particular posture. Because I have come to believe that your body is so wise. It is one of the wisest things on the planet, I believe,
Right.
even beyond the way the mind works. Right?
Yes, yes.
And what happens is when we can go into that silent level of deep listening, the body is going to give us information that if we start to trust and follow that innate wisdom, we will automatically raise our health and well-being just by simply putting ourselves in that way of being with our body. Not that we have to demand something from the body, not that we have to shape it in a certain way, but we have to more deeply listen to the messages that the water wisdom is offering us, because we're made of, some people say 70%, I've heard other people say 80% water. Emily had used any spectrum of that percentage. And if we really think about it, your body is always exchanging information through fluid process, right? If you think about it. Any process internally is going to be in a fluid fashion because it's all fluid, right? So why not do something that's going to bring about so much amplification of a fluid process so that your body is just going to create a cycle of healing in and of itself. Because your body is always trying to keep you well. It's always trying to stay in that status quo, that homeostasis, right? And so when we can offer ourselves a container to be in our body, listening deeply, we start to find what I believe the origins of yoga is.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is such an important point. We hear these days so much about the importance of interoception, you know, the importance of embodiment, the importance of somatics, and they're really all explorations within the same space. And I think one of the things that's most fascinating to me about this whole work is we know, you know, people with higher levels of interoception have, you know, higher levels of health, higher levels of well-being. They're able to catch things earlier on. And even beyond that, we know now that, you know, mind and body are not separate. That is like one continuum. But experientially, we're still like, this is my mind, this is my body, this is me, this is my body. And really, I think what we're doing with the work you're offering is we're moving into that overlap where the mind is the body is the mind. Is that your experience?
Yes. And there's a really deep way that we teach about, there's a part of your mind that's always being used for attention, right? We're doing it right now. Like I'm paying attention to you, you're paying attention to me in a certain way. And So in Continuum, we start to hone in on that skill of paying attention. And there's all different kinds of ways to pay attention. We can pay attention very focally. We can pay attention with a wider perception. When we can start to really see how important it is to build in that level of attention, we start to realize the potential that we have as an organism. And I like to call us organisms because it puts us in a different context rather than being a modern person, upright, moving in the world, trying to get all of our tasks done and all of the responsibilities that we have. We kind of move underneath all of that. So we start to come back to the biological way that we are, which is a fluid-based process living on a planet in a galaxy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it really gives us a gateway to perception of an area of a realm that we are not trained in our culture to perceive, but which I think really moves into the realm of the mystic.
Well, Continuum is profoundly mysterious in the way that it is always in a place of discovery. So it's about really bumping out the participation with the unknown and being able to feel the trust of yourself enough to hold that space so that discovery can continue to happen, right? It's very bold to be able to do this with yourself and with others in a space, to be able to grow in the capacity to hang in with an unknown process. And at each step, you're discovering something, right? But you're suspending the need to make it conclusive. Because if we think about a process, if it's open, there's always more. So let's say if we take this in the realm of an asana practice, right? An asana can go on forever if we think about it in the way of continuum, because we're not really looking for an outcome. We're looking for a way of being in the body in a movement process, right? And what I love about Continuum and yoga together is it starts to really create a unique experience for each person that does it. So in other words, somebody might be doing something different over here than someone over there, within the context of a similar thing. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate being in an environment with people, giving that permission of self-regulation and self-agency, which I think is so necessary today in the world that we live in.
Yeah, and particularly in our approach to yoga practice, where, you know, the top-down, rigid, do as I say, with this alignment, although it has its value, really locks us off from that mind-body experience that yoga also offers.
Right. Well, let's talk about alignment, because I like some things about yoga very much, but it depends, right? So let's say you came to me as a person that wanted some help around yoga practice, and there's something specific that you're having some challenges with, right? The first thing that I would help you with is to become an inner tracker. So we would just omit whatever it was about yoga that you're having challenges with, and I would bring you into a process with yourself of experiencing yourself on that fluid level, giving you some sound, working with gravity, perhaps creating a little bit more fluidity. And then if we did something more specific in an asana practice, your system is more receptive, right? Whereas a lot of people come in and they start doing yoga and they're asked to do these very, very challenging things with their body, and they haven't really done anything up to that point except perhaps sit at a desk, right? So we have to really see the culture that we live in.
Right.
So we have to go back into the organism, become as fluid and open as possible. And then if we're offered something that has specifics to it in terms of alignment, there's more space. There's going to be more space for the movement in and out of that, right?
Yeah.
And because they're developing a sense of self-regulation and self-agency, if the alignment doesn't work for some reason, right, there might be another option for them that they start to live into that's completely appropriate for their body.
Right.
Because to think that a principle is right for everyone, this is a bold statement in a yoga practice, is wrong.
Right.
Say that something is specific for everyone is a wrong thing to do.
Right.
I'm very, very passionate about that.
Yeah.
And that's really what's made my practice and teaching so wonderful for people, is that I give a lot of room for lots of different ways of doing it. Now, you also have to look at if people are creating compromises in their practice, right? So we have to look for that, and we look for it together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we say, okay, so you're not able to bring your shoulder blade down on your back, let's say, for example. Let's see if we can explore that from a somatic point of view, from an internal process, so that you get information as to what's going on there. And it might not have anything to do with your shoulder. It could have everything to do with your hip or your knee or your foot. So if we look at something as a holistic process, we really have to look at the whole person. It could have to do with how you hold your shoulders in meetings all day. It could have to do with the way you have had your shoulders since you're a child. It could be how your father held your shoulders. I mean, there's so many, doorways into a process with someone, right?
Yeah.
And so then when they start to really uniquely feel into their own experience, and they start to become a little bit more fluid within themselves, that shoulder blade is going to have a little bit more movement in a lot of different directions, so that when they're invited in to take your shoulder blade onto your back, perhaps they would have more available.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And that whole concept of building inner tracking really is a great way to enhance body awareness. And as you say, help students get more in command of their own body, their own feelings, because so many times in yoga classes, we all know the example of, particularly in mixed level classes, people coming in and then forcing themselves into what they feel is the right expression of the yoga posture, which, from the looks of it, most of the time is terribly uncomfortable and even injurious.
Yeah, so they're going beyond their self-regulated line.
Yeah,
right?
And it's one of the main issues I think yoga teachers are facing. So it's a wonderful concept that if you start with developing that inner tracking and help people connect with their bodies, that automatically they're going to say, no, this isn't working for me. What else can I do?
And it also has a lot to do with exploration. So there has to be a willingness for a group of people to decide that they're going to be in an exploration for the time that they're in the class, right?
Right, yeah.
They're going to come out of the class with a set of skills, but it's going to be from an exploratory point of view rather than a set of specific things.
Yeah.
That's where I think Soma Yoga, the continuum of yoga, is different than, let's say, a traditional yoga class.
Right. Yeah. That's
Whereas,
beautiful.
there has to be just everybody is agreeing that this is going to be exploration, and there is no one answer to a question. There could be many answers.
Yeah, beautiful. Now there are other systems of yoga that integrate a more somatic approach, and you and I both share a background in Kripalu yoga. And one of the things I always liked about Kripalu yoga is they give a pause in the gap between poses. So they usually allow for a resting period after each pose where you tune in and see what was the effect created by the pose. And there is like a wave of sensation, signature wave that goes through the body with each pose. And that's like, another example of this entryway or and opening into this other realm of experiencing the poses. Is that also part of your approach?
Well, I haven't been certified in Kripalu Yoga, but I have had a lot of Kripalu Yoga experience. So I think that the pause is an important phase of integration. That's the way I might describe it. If I offered a pause in something that we were exploring, it would be what I would call openly paying attention. So in other words, you're openly paying attention to whatever sensations are arising, whatever feeling states, and also being aware of any change. Because change is also a process. It doesn't just happen, right? So let's say your shoulder, I'm using the shoulder again, is starting to feel different, right? So you want to really be awake. You want to awaken the process of that within your experience so that you can track change. Because when you can track change, you see the progression, and perhaps over here is the end point instead of continuing to go back again, right? So it's an exploration and a place where you really learn something is different from an experience of something. Like, for example, if you have a class and you've just had a really good experience of yourself, and you come out and you know you feel different than when you first came in, but you don't know how it happened. There's no awakening.
Right.
Well, what? Why do I feel? What happened? What happened here? Right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot around slowing down, because the internal process, the body-based processes, are incredibly slow. The mind, especially the modern mind, is very fast, right? So the body is always trying to keep up with the mind. Right? So what we do is we let the mind rest back the way it normally speeds up, and we take the attention part of the mind and we start to drop it into the slow expression of the body, and we give that the forefront, right? So we start to really create a sense of value and a sense of deep noticing, so that we're in this place of, and it's an incredibly beautiful place of, first of all, relieving us of stress. It can be incredibly deep relaxation, right? Because when we start to move and enliven ourselves from that place, we take out any places where we have to overexert. You know, the first place in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras says yoga is effortless. What does that actually mean? Right? And I really do the translation as loose, because from Sanskrit to English is difficult, right? So perhaps what Patanjali was pointing to is that your system feels like it's not overtaxing itself to do something.
Balanced and steady.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Now, Bobbie, one of the reasons we have this talk is because we're very pleased you have a course coming up on YogaU, as we talked about earlier. So tell us about the course and how you're conducting it. It's a little different from our usual formats.
Right. Well, I like the idea of it being live, because I want you to be in real participation, okay? I want to be able to hopefully interact with people as best as we can in this format. I mean, I've done Zoom classes where I do interact with people, so that we can start to open a sense of exploration, right? So my first class is going to be about connecting to gravity and space. We're going to be learning inner tracking skills, right? We're going to be working with reclined Tadasana. Then we're going to take reclined Tadasana into upright Tadasana. Then we may go into some standing and walking from Tadasana. And it's going to be really sensing and feeling. So it's going to be exploratory, right? So based on the feedback that I get as a teacher from the group of people that join will be how the process continues in that particular sequence, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also going to be offering in that class an embodied meditation practice, which is called Time to Settle. I have a embodied meditation CD that I have available, and the first track is called Time to Settle, and it's really about connecting with gravity and the earth, and I think that that's a really important place to start. Mm-hmm. In session 2, we're going to start to work with more fluid movement from the place of gravity and working with how space supports movement. Mm-hmm. So we don't really think about that a lot. How does the space around me and the space inside my body support my movement? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's less about what muscles are working, right. How do I need to create muscle action, and more about how can I create more spaciousness so that my muscle skeletal system, my connective tissue is fluid, my muscle skeletal system has a lot of space to move in many different directions, right? Right. So we'll start to hone in on that. Asana practice will probably be more on the floor, although we may take some things into standing just to sense feel. So you're on the floor for a while, you're doing some explorations, and then you're coming up to standing and seeing how that gets translated. So it's a lot around inner tracking again, because inner tracking takes a while, I want to say, to reestablish, because we all had it when we were kids. Mm-hmm. When we were little babies, we knew how to sense and feel ourselves, mm-hmm. right? But because the intellect took over and now we live life through thinking, it has gone a little bit dimmed down. So we want to create experiences where we can start to bring the light and awakening back into the insights that the body is always offering us.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. That's beautiful. And then we have a Q&A with you in between the 2 sessions, so people can ask more specific questions and get to know the overall framework of the work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a real introduction. I do something, I like to call it depths work, because as I mentioned before, it takes time and people have to agree to an exploration. Right? Right. They will come out with a set of beautiful skills in terms of somatic practices, but it's coming from their experience of themselves in it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And for yoga teachers, if yoga teachers these are wonderful skills to have inside yourself, because then they're readily available to offer your students.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, my experience is I have a challenge offering my students anything that I don't have inside myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like I could read it out of a book and it might be okay, but it's not deeply in my tissues.
Yeah, you have to be authentic.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, Bobbie, we are so pleased that you are offering this course to our community, and very, very much looking forward to it. And thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about all your exciting work.
Thank you, Eva. I'll see you in September.
Yes. Namaste. Take care.
Namaste.
Bye.